Hey guys, how's it going? This is Waj, and in this video we'll be doing a three-way comparison of what I consider to be the top 3 tablets that are available right now. I'm talking about the Samsung Tab S, the iPad Air 2, and the Google Nexus 9. So if you're interested in perhaps getting one of these tablets or upgrading to a tablet that has the latest generation of pretty much everything and really high resolution screen, definitely stay tuned because I think these 3 offer the most for your money. So let's get right into this comparison. Now, the first thing that we're going to take a look at is the overall physical design of all 3 of these tablets. Now, in terms of dimensions themselves, you can see that the Nexus 9 certainly is the smallest tablet out of the other 2, measuring only about 228.2 millimeters in terms of its height and about 153.7 millimeters in terms of its width. And you can see that the Air 2 and the Tab S are pretty much very similar. The Tab S is just a little bit wider and taller than the iPad, but fairly similar. Now, in terms of weight itself, you can see that the Tab S is the heaviest at 467 grams, and the Nexus 9 is the lightest at 425 grams, and the Air 2 is right in the middle, measuring about 437 grams. Furthermore, in terms of thickness, the iPad Air still retains its name of measuring only about 6.1 millimeters, which is pretty darn insane, and the Tab S is not too far behind at 6.6, and the Nexus 9 is the thickest at 7.9 millimeters. Now, in terms of the construction itself, I do have to say that the Nexus 9 and the Air 2 are kind of on par with each other in terms of build quality and materials. They're both using metal components, although the iPad Air 2 is fully made out of aluminum construction, and the Nexus 9 has a mixture of different materials. It has a rubberized back, which is definitely nice to use, but it does flop around a little bit because it's not glued to the actual metal body itself, which is can be annoying sometimes. Additionally, the camera protrudes a little bit as well, which could get potentially scratched if you do place it on a table and slide it around a little bit, as you would commonly do when using the tablet. The one big positive aspect about the Nexus 9 is that its form factor and shape is just perfect for, I think, most people to use. It's very comfortable to hold. It's probably one of the most comfortable tablets out of the 3 because it has a nice kind of subtle curves around the back, and plus you have that nice grippy rubberized back. Now, the Tab S is also very well made. It's not made of the same level of components as the other 2 tablets, mostly made out of high quality polycarbonate plastics, but it's certainly on par with them in terms of durability and everything like that. It does have the tendency to flex a little bit more, but I don't think that's a major concern at all. Now, we're going to straight away get into some of the unique aspects that each device, I think, offers. Now, obviously, the Tab S and the Nexus 9 are both running Android, but they are running different versions of Android. We have the latest Lollipop running on the Nexus 9, which is one of the first devices to come with Android 5.0, and Tab S is running the Android 4.4 KitKat. Now, hopefully that'll get updated to Lollipop soon, but it's still going to be using the TouchWiz interface that you see on most of these Samsung devices, which is not a bad interface. It's not the cleanest and most simplest to use. I would definitely prefer a more pure Android experience. So personally, I do prefer the pure Android experience on the Nexus 9 compared to the TouchWiz interface on the Tab S, but that's purely my preference. You definitely have to check out both interfaces to see which one you like best. But there are some unique aspects about the Tab S that the Nexus 9 does not have. In fact, the iPad Air 2 and the Tab S both have fingerprint scanners. I think the Touch ID system on the Air 2 is a little bit more robust. You can basically scan your fingerprint in most orientations, and it does a good job of recognizing your fingerprint, versus the Tab S is a little bit more finicky. Now, the Air 2 comes with the latest generation of iOS 8, which is certainly a nice improvement from iOS 7. You have a couple of aspects that I really like about the new OS, including handoff and continuity features, so you can seamlessly integrate all your different iOS devices and carry work from one device to the other pretty darn seamlessly. I also do like the whole remote calling Wi-Fi capability, so if you're on the same networks as your iPhone, you can receive and make phone calls using your iOS device. Now, let's move on to talk about one of the most important things about any tablet, and that definitely has to be the display. Now, in terms of display size, we have 9 inches on the Nexus 9, 9.7 on the iPad Air, and about 10.5 inches on the Tab S. Now, in terms of overall resolution, the Tab S has the highest native resolution, about 2560 by 1600, giving it a very impressive PPI, about 288 versus about 264 on the iPad Air 2 and about 281 on the Nexus 9. Now, in terms of overall screen quality and overall kind of color dynamics, I do have to say that the Tab S probably has a little bit better color rendition and just a better kind of screen, because not only because of its higher resolution, but it's using Super AMOLED technology, which is organic LED, so the black levels are infinite, and the color renditions are also very good. It has an adaptive display, so you can change with the different environments, and the other devices also have similar technologies, but they are using traditional LCD in terms of screen and LED backlight. So the overall kind of black levels you get with the Samsung are in another league, just because of its display technology. And although the Nexus 9 and the iPad Air 2 are completely amazing screens in their own right, I just think if you're going to compare all three, I think the Tab S just edges the other two out just a tiny bit based on some of the specifications, and when you view it in real life, you can just get a little bit more of an impression of how amazing that display really is. In terms of the internal specifications, I think all three tablets offer some really powerful components internally. Now, certainly the iPad Air 2 is using the brand new Apple A8X, which is a triple core processor clocked in about 1.5 gigahertz and has 2 gigabytes of RAM, and the Tegra K1 is in the new Nexus 9. That's a dual core processor that's clocked in about 2.3 gigahertz that also has 2 gigabytes of RAM. And lastly, the Tab S is actually using an Exynos 8-core chip, which is comprised of 2 quad-core processors, one clocked in about 1.9 gigahertz, the other one clocked about 1.3 gigahertz, and it has 3 gigs of RAM. So it is a powerful computer. And in order to test out which internal specifications comes out on top, looking at the Geekbench scores over here, you can see in terms of the single core score, the Nexus 9 wins by just a thread, measuring about 1946 versus 1804 on the iPad Air, and only about 915 on the Samsung Tab S. In terms of multi-core, the new Apple A8X is definitely a beast, getting a score about 4475 versus 3256 on the Nexus 9 and about 2757 on the Tab S. Now, in real life, when you are using the Tab S, even though it does have a little bit of a lower performance CPU compared to the other two, there's not a major lag, but it is, you can definitely tell that it's not as snappy as what you'd find on the Nexus 9 and certainly on the iPad Air 2. But definitely a very usable tablet that's very capable of doing most things that you would ever want to do on a tablet. So definitely no major kind of limitations, even though the internal processor may not be as fast as these latest generation tablets. Now, in terms of gaming performance and graphical capabilities, we're going to take a look at the Ice Storm benchmark and see how all three of these devices do in terms of FPS scores. Now, as you can see, they're all pretty much very similar in terms of graphical capabilities. When we're taking a look at the first graphics test, they're all getting about 60 frames per second. On the second test, the Tab S actually did a little bit lower of what the other two can do. But interestingly, when you're taking a look at the physics test, that GPU that's in the Tab S, the Adreno 330, is doing an excellent job in terms of calculating physics, getting a higher FPS, about 43.5 frames per second versus about 33.6 frames per second on the Nexus 9 and about 32 frames per second on the iPad Air 2. Now, one of the cool aspects about the new HTC Nexus 9 is that it actually has dual stereo speakers that you typically don't find in a lot of tablets. So let's go ahead, compare all three tablets to see which one sounds the best. Now, in terms of memory, both the Nexus 9 and the iPad Air 2 don't have expandable memory capabilities, unlike the Tab S, where it has a micro SD expansion slot, so you can upgrade the internal memory of whatever model you get up to 128 gigabytes. Now, moving forward and taking a look at the cameras on all three tablets, you can see that the front-facing camera actually has a higher megapixel count, about 2.1 megapixels versus about 1.6 on the Nexus 9 and about 1.2 on the iPad Air 2. Now, taking a look at the rear-facing cameras of all three devices, I think they all offer a really great rear-facing camera in each regard. Now, the Nexus 9 and the Tab S actually have very similar specifications in terms of rear-facing cameras. They both have 8 megapixel stills capabilities with 1080p at 30 frames per second, video capabilities, and they also have LED flash. Now, the Apple iPad Air 2 doesn't have LED flash, but it also has an 8 megapixel camera that does 1080p at 30 frames per second. But one unique aspect about it is that it actually can do slow motion at 720p at 120 frames per second. So let's go ahead and take a look at the video capabilities and the stills on all three tablets, and then you can decide which one looks best to you. Now, lastly, the final thing that we're going to talk about is the all-important battery life. Now, all three deliver excellent battery life, but if you had to pick a winner, I would definitely have to say the new Nexus 9 offers the best overall performance. I average about 12 to 15 hours on a regular day-to-day use. Now, your battery life always fluctuates between how you use the device itself, but this Nexus 9 is certainly a beast in terms of its battery life. Not only can it charge the fastest, I got 0 to 100% charge in about 250 minutes versus about 360 minutes on the Tab S and about 300 minutes on the iPad Air 2, but it definitely offers the best performance. However, one thing to certainly mention is that the Tab S is certainly not far behind in terms of battery performance, a solid 11 hours in terms of most web browsing usage, and the Air 2 is pretty consistent at around 10 hours of web browsing and general usage. But on that, guys, that's really it. If you have any specific questions about anything I talked about in this video, please make sure to leave that on a comment down below. Love to hear your thoughts on which tablet you guys think comes out on top. I'm a huge fan of the new Nexus 9, but I think the Tab S and the iPad Air 2 definitely offer some unique features that there are some missing from the Nexus 9. But overall, definitely a very interesting comparison. If you have any specific reason of which tablet you would choose, definitely let me know in the comment down below. And give us a thumbs up if this video helped you out in any way whatsoever. But other than that, we'll see you later and take care.